When we think of Jesus' miracles, the big ones usually come to mind, right? Like stilling storms or feeding thousands. But some of the most fascinating ones are the quiet, subtle ones. Today, we're looking at one of the most unique, the miracle of the coin in the fish's mouth. It's a fantastic story that kicks off with a simple tax problem and ends up being this masterclass in identity, authority, and just incredible wisdom. And really, this is the core dilemma Jesus is facing here. It's one of those situations that could so easily blow up into a huge fight with the religious authorities. But Jesus' solution? Well, it's brilliant, totally unexpected, and it tells us something absolutely crucial about who he is and how his kingdom works. It's not about flexing power, it's about making peace. All right, so the story gets going in Capernaum, which was kind of Jesus' home base. Picture this bustling town, and a couple of local officials spot one of his top disciples, Peter, and they've got a question for him. A pretty pointed public question that puts him right on the spot. Okay, so what you've got to know is that this temple tax was a religious duty for every Jewish man. It was a half shekel that went to keep the temple in Jerusalem running. So when these collectors ask Peter if Jesus pays, they're really asking if he respects their most sacred traditions. And Peter, without even thinking to ask Jesus, just wants to defend his teacher's reputation. So he blurts out, yes, of course he does. It's a loyal answer, for sure, but it also creates a problem he doesn't even see coming. So Peter gets back to the house, probably all geared up to explain this awkward run-in he just had. But before he can even get a word out, Jesus already knows. He's a step ahead. But instead of getting annoyed or reaching for his wallet, he uses this as a teachable moment. He hits Peter with a riddle, completely flipping the conversation from a practical problem to a much, much deeper one. And this is just classic Jesus, isn't it? He never just gives you the answer. He leads you to the truth with questions. He asks Peter, a fisherman, to think like a king. Hey, how does this all work? Who actually pays taxes in a kingdom? The answer is super obvious, but the implication behind it, well, that's a game changer. And Peter gets it right away. He says, from others. Of course, kings tax their subjects, not their own kids. The royal family is exempt simply because of who they are. And this is the point. Jesus is making Peter connect the dots about his identity. If this tax is for God's temple and Jesus is God's son, then... And there's the punchline. Jesus confirms Peter's logic, and in doing so, he makes this incredible, staggering claim about himself. He's saying, I'm the son of the king, the son of God. This tax is for my father's house, so I'm exempt. It's not him being rebellious, it's a quiet, powerful declaration of who he is. So if he's exempt, you think the next step is to refuse to pay, right? To make a big stand. But he doesn't. He takes a third option, one that shows off both his authority and his wisdom. And the solution he comes up with is, well, it's just plain weird, especially for a fisherman like Peter. First, he explains why he's doing what he's about to do. He's going to pay the tax, not because he has to, but to avoid a fight that doesn't need to happen. He's choosing humility over his own rights. It's this act of practical wisdom to keep the peace and not trip up people who don't really get who he is yet. And this is where it gets strange. He tells Peter, a guy who made his living using giant nets, to go back to the Sea of Galilee and just cast a single line. You can almost feel Peter's confusion, can't you? What's one fish going to do? This command required some serious trust. So now we get to the climax of the whole story. Peter, armed with this truly bizarre instruction, heads down to the water, and he's about to see a miracle of provision that is as precise as it is mind-blowing. The command gets even more detailed. It's not just any fish. It has to be the very first one he catches. And then he's supposed to look inside its mouth. I mean, this isn't fishing for dinner. This is like a divine treasure hunt. And there it is. Peter pulls up the first fish, he opens its mouth, and he finds a silver coin, a 4-drachma coin, also known as a shekel or a stater. And this was not just some random coin. This is the detail that's so crucial. The coin's value, 4 drachmas, was the exact amount needed to pay the half-shekel temple tax for 2 people, Jesus and Peter. This wasn't a lucky catch. This was a jaw-dropping display of sovereign provision, showing Jesus' command over nature down to the tiniest, most specific detail. So that brings us from what happened to what it all means. This miracle was never just about a clever way to pay a bill. It was something theologians call an enacted parable, basically an action that teaches a really deep truth. So what's an enacted parable? It's when the message isn't just in the words someone says, but in the action they perform. The act itself is the lesson. The whole event of finding that coin in the fish's mouth is a living, breathing lesson about Jesus' identity and his power. So let's break that lesson down. It really has three parts. First, it establishes his divine kingship. That whole riddle proves he's the Son of God and shouldn't have to pay. Second, it shows his humble wisdom. He has every right to refuse, but he pays anyway to avoid a pointless conflict. And third, it demonstrates his sovereign provision. I mean, he can command a fish to find a coin and bring it to Peter. That's effortless authority over all of creation. And this is so cool when you see how it fits into the bigger biblical story. In the Old Testament, you read about God providing on a massive scale, like manna from heaven for millions of people. But this miracle, it's different, it's intimate, it's personal. The exact coin for the exact need for two specific people. It shows that the same God who provides for entire nations also cares about the smallest details of our individual lives. So we end with this question to really think about. This quiet little miracle reveals a totally different kind of power, doesn't it? It's not about demanding your rights or forcing people to recognize you. It's about using absolute authority with humility, with wisdom, and with a deep, profound care for other people. It shows us a king who serves, a provider who cares, and a teacher whose action speaks every bit as loudly as his words.